3 weeks ago, I made a video about whether the Backrooms movie had what it took to get it right. I laid out 5 tests, and at the end of that video, I ended it with one line. I think he gets it right, but I've been wrong before. And guess what? I wasn't wrong. But here's the thing. The reason why most people reviewing this film today are going to get it wrong isn't because the movie failed. It's because they walked in without the context that makes this film work. What's that context, you're probably asking? It didn't start in the theater. It started on YouTube. If you haven't seen my pre-released breakdown of this movie, I'm going to link it in the description and pin it in the comments. And I recommend you watch it before you see this film because I give you 5 tests that'll help you watch this movie and understand it. And if you haven't seen Kane Parsons' original series, you need to watch that too, because what you're about to walk into isn't chapter 1 of this film. When A24 announced that they were backing this film, every horror fan online had the same concern, whether a budget would kill the thing that made the Backrooms terrifying in the first place. That was the right question, but it was also the wrong framing, because this movie isn't an adaptation of a concept. This is chapter 6. Kane Parsons has been building this world since he was 17 years old with a budget camera and 0 budget. And with that, he garnered over 30 million views because he understood something most horror filmmakers spend decades trying to learn, is that the moment you explain something, you've destroyed it. So walking into a theater expecting a standard horror experience, that's your first mistake. Critics who don't understand Kane's series aren't watching a film. They're walking into a story they've missed the first 5 chapters of. And of course, they're gonna call it confusing, and they're not wrong. But confusing isn't the same thing as bad. I'm gonna say this as plainly as possible. If you have not seen Kane Parsons' Backrooms series on YouTube, you need to go watch that first.
Never enter the complex alone. All expeditions are to be comprised of no fewer than 3 individuals.
The first test I laid out was restraint over revelation, and he passed that with flying colors. Ask yourself something. When something goes wrong, what's the first thing you reach for? Your phone. Not because you're documenting, because it's just instinct. Because holding a camera gives you the illusion that you're still in control of something. These characters aren't filming for documentation. They're filming because it's all they have left. And that's what made the found footage work here, okay? It wasn't a gimmick. The camera work still reflects the reality of the situation. Shaky is where it still needs to be, but it still leaves the space to do all the work for it, if that makes sense to you. And there is a line in this film that has stuck with me since I've watched it. How do you explain the Backrooms? Because the Backrooms doesn't have an origin you can deliver in just 3 minutes. It's just there. He revealed just enough to make the space feel huge and vast. Just enough to pull you even deeper into the story. But he never closes the loop because some things are better left unexplained. Because let's be honest, the moment you hand the audience the answer, then you've taken the fear away, and Kane, at only 20 years old, he knows this. The second test that I had for this film was whether the space would be treated as a character or if it was going to be just the backdrop of this film. Some of you may know this about me, and some of you that are new to this channel may not know this about me. But I've worked on a movie set as well as a TV set on the construction side of things. And I also own and build escape rooms. I've spent years designing experiences specifically meant to make people feel unsafe in a space. Man, and I'll tell you what, this crew built something that just was not normal. This isn't a set designer that's just making a hallway look creepy. This is someone who understood that the geometry itself had to be wrong, and not visually wrong. I would have given anything to be in those production meetings because whoever designed this understood something a lot of horror filmmakers never figure out. Is that the space itself doesn't need a monster if the space itself is a threat. And that is what liminal space horror is supposed to do. It puts you somewhere that almost looks right, almost familiar, but in ways that you almost can't even figure out what's wrong with the space. And as this movie just kept going on and these rooms just kept revealing more of themselves, I just sat back and just enjoyed just the overall look of this film and knowing that this was all practical sets and no CGI. Here's where most horror films go wrong, is that they build the dread, but then they turn around and then they explain it because they just can't help themselves. The studio wants to give you the answers and the test audience just wants resolution. So they'll give you a scene where someone explains what's happening and why they're doing it and what they need to do to stop it. And the moment they do all that, the fear dies. The Backrooms doesn't do any of that. And I want to talk about why that restraint is harder to pull off than it sounds. Test number 3 and 4 are connected, that we don't want clean answers and that we need tone over spectacle, because both of those live and die together. Once this film finds its rhythm, it stops trying to be a conventional horror experience. It becomes a document, a look into what it would be like if this space was actually a real thing with no logic, no exit, and no guarantee that anything that you're seeing is real. And at the end of this film, we don't need to know more than what we knew going in. We know that the Backrooms is expanding. We know that it's mirroring our world. What we don't know is why it's doing this. We don't know what started it. We don't know how to stop it. And the film has the confidence to just let that be enough. And that is what's frustrating a lot of you viewers out there who are leaving this theater confused. But for the fans of Kane's work, that's not a flaw. That's the point. It's visually stunning, architecturally disturbing, and it's completely committed to not giving you the relief of an explanation. My 5th test was the one that I had the most concern about, which was Kane needs to stay in that chair. Both James Wan and Osgood Perkins are attached as producers to this film. Now look, I'm a big James Wan fan, but with being a fan, you also know that he has a formula. The jump scare setups that you can see coming, the tension that resolves cleanly, and horror that satisfies in a way that the Backrooms was never designed to satisfy. Now, let me make sure I'm clear on this, because this film has jump scares, okay? They're in there because they land in a way after it builds the dread first. Once that dread's in there, then it just gives that jump scare at just the right time. And then it just goes away. It's not going to be a non-stop startle fest, okay? It's not a Wan film wearing a Kane costume. You can feel that from the very opening frame of the film to the closing frame that Kane was driving this vehicle the entire time, because the pacing hits and the restraint that is there is his. Because if you've seen his channel, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because he has the refusal to just give you the answer, okay? That's his fingerprint on this film. Before I keep going on, if you've stumbled upon this channel and you're liking this review of the Backrooms, then do me a favor. Hit that sub button so you don't miss any of my reviews, horror recommendations, and horror topics that I put out weekly. But let's get back to the bad part of this film. I want to be fair, okay? Because fair matters. Is this film perfect? Not by any means, okay? There are moments in this film that needed another pass through the editing room. There's a few sequences in this film that it overstays its welcome just a little bit too long. And I'm not going to pretend that they're just there because I want to just respect what Kane is doing. I've got to be honest. For those of you that have been getting online on your different social pages and whatnot, I want you to keep this in mind before you press send on that review. Kane Parsons is just 20 years old, okay? He built 30 million views on YouTube with a low budget camera and a zero budget. And then A24 comes along, hands him $10 million and say, deliver the film. Show us that it wasn't luck. Prove the concept is real. And look, I don't care who you are. That pressure has just got to be enormous, okay? I guarantee you this young man wasn't sleeping very good at night. And the fact that he came out on the other side with a film that is coherent, atmospheric, and it's true to the source material at 20 years old, first feature film, that's not a failure, guys. That's just a foundation, because the editing issues, those will get fixed. The pacing, that frustrates a lot of audiences. He's going to recalibrate all that, because now that he has one film under his belt, just like every good filmmaker's first film that has little cracks in it, it's only going to get better. Now, to those of you people that are getting online and posting that it was boring, nothing happened, I fell asleep, it was confusing, it was a complete failure, I have a single question for you. What were you expecting? And that's not a rhetorical question. That's a real question for you. When you bought that movie ticket, what did you think you were walking into? Did you know anything about this film before you sat down? And did you understand what the ending of this film was all about? I remember when I went and saw Iron Lung in theater, I walked in with no idea of the lore behind it. Nothing. And when I walked out, I was confused, I was bored, and I was genuinely annoyed, because nothing that happened on that screen meant anything to me without the context. The fans of the film, the people who knew the video game, those who understand the world before they walked in, they all absolutely loved it. And it landed for them because they came prepared. So I know where all the non-fans are coming from with this Backrooms film. I really do, because I've been that person. But I need you to be honest with yourself. If you walked into chapter 6 without reading chapters 1 through 5, and your verdict is nothing happened, that's not the film's fault. That's because you didn't do any preparation leading up to this film. So what were you expecting? 3 weeks ago, I said, I think he gets this right, but I've been wrong before. 5 tests, 5 passes, I wasn't wrong. This film isn't going to be for everyone. And it wasn't designed to be. It was designed for the people who have been watching Kane series and already know that the Backrooms doesn't owe you any answers. It was designed for the viewers who are comfortable sitting in uncertainty, in an architecture that makes no sense, and in a story that doesn't give any resolution. If you go into this film expecting a conventional horror experience, then you're going to come out frustrated. And the reviews that are coming out left and right are already reflecting that. And it's not because the movie failed, it's because the film requires context that most of you don't have time for, or don't want to make time for. If you like this review on the Backrooms movie, then do me a favor, hit that like button. And especially if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my horror reviews, recommendations, and topics that I put out weekly. So until next time, go check out my other videos, especially one that I put out a couple weeks ago about what the Backrooms has one shot to get right. Make sure you go check out Kane Parsons' videos before you go check out this movie. But more importantly, don't get too scared. Take care, guys.